everyone, it's Sarah from Sarah Gale Nutrition here, and this week I'm talking all about PMS or premenstrual syndrome. And as a female, I don't need to tell you what the symptoms of PMS are. I have never met any female, whether it's clients, whether it's socially, whether it's friends, whether it's acquaintances, that hasn't struggled with some sort of PMS. And the symptoms can be so wide ranging that actually if you Google PMS symptoms, it is a long, long list. It's not like sort of 5, there are hundreds. So I'm not going to sit here and go through all the different types of PMS because we all experience it slightly differently. But the hallmark of PMS is actually symptoms that we experience in the luteal phase, the second half of our period, or our menstrual cycle, I should say, and often they come the week before our period. So it is important to differentiate between maybe symptoms we have all the time, all month round, and PMS symptoms, because actually they give us slightly different information of what is going on. So let's say bloating is a really common one, and often I hear women say, I have really bad bloating before my period, but actually when we delve into it, they're kind of constantly bloated and it kind of comes and goes and maybe gets worse throughout the day. So that isn't necessarily just a PMS symptom. And the reason why it's important to differentiate between actually do you have these symptoms all the time or just the week before your period, because actually they probably have different underlying root causes. And when we work on that underlying root cause, that's when we can get symptom relief. I think it's also important to say that PMS is incredibly common. As I said, I've never met a female, and I'm sure you have too, that hasn't suffered with some kind of PMS. So it's incredibly common, but it's not normal. So what I'll be covering in this video are the 8 main reasons of why PMS can occur, along with the different symptoms associated with those imbalances, to give you a starting place to hopefully start resolving some of your PMS symptoms. I also want to quickly differentiate between PMS and PMDD, which is premenstrual dysmorphic disorder. And it can be very similar to PMS, but often these symptoms are far more severe and they're often more psychological in nature. So often they're associated with depression, feeling low, feeling hopeless, really severe anxiety, extreme anger, just feeling very, very low, very irritable, so far more psychological in nature. But it can feel like a switch is turned on the day of your period. So as soon as you start bleeding, that actually you can have all these horrible symptoms of feeling low, anxious, hopeless. First day of your period when you start bleeding, you're like, oh my God, I'm a whole new person. And that is a hallmark of PMDD. And what I'll be going through in this video, yes, some of the underlying factors can be contributing to PMDD, but often it has a stronger link with our happy hormone, our serotonin production, and how sensitive the cells are to receiving serotonin. So if you resonate with PMDD, then I do encourage you to reach out to a doctor, reach out to a qualified professional to work on that, or a psychologist, whatever support you feel you need. But this video will also give you a starting place to start working on some of your symptoms. Over to what can cause PMS, the top 8 reasons that PMS can occur. The first one is fluctuating hormone levels, so estrogen and progesterone. And before you start hating on these hormones, I want to say that it isn't the hormones themselves that are the problem, and we can often start to blame our hormones because we say, oh, I'm hormonal and they cause everything that's wrong with me. Actually, they aren't inherently bad. They can actually be very beneficial for things like mood and metabolism in the body. They just get a bad rap because when the levels go a little bit wonky and they're no longer in the nice harmonious relationship and ratio, that is when symptoms can occur. So both estrogen and progesterone fluctuate throughout the menstrual cycle. Estrogen dominates in the first half of the menstrual cycle, and then progesterone dominates in the second half of the menstrual cycle. So progesterone should be higher than estrogen in the second half, in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. Both hormones peak at about day 21, so progesterone is very much higher. Estrogen peaks at ovulation around day 14, drops a little bit, then peaks again. But your progesterone, so they both have a little peak, but your progesterone should still be a lot higher. If your estrogen is higher than your progesterone, then this can lead to symptoms such as irritability, headaches, breast pain, and fluid retention. And what goes up must come down. So when estrogen levels start to drop after that second peak, it can cause withdrawal, which is then associated with things like night sweats, migraines, hot flushes, and tiredness. What can happen that actually if we do have sufficient progesterone produced in the second half of the menstrual phase is it can protect us against some of the estrogen fluctuations. So if sufficient progesterone has been produced, it can produce a compound called allopregnanolone, which is then converted to GABA. And GABA's job is to really calm the brain. So actually if you produce enough progesterone, which then will mean you produce GABA, it can stop you feeling so moody, so irritable, and reduce your aggressiveness as well, and just feeling on edge. So actually we really want sufficient progesterone production in the second half of the cycle. If again we have those fluctuating, too large a fluctuation between estrogen and progesterone, then actually that can reduce the activity of serotonin, our happy hormone in the brain. This can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and aggressiveness. We might also get increased cravings for things like sugar and carbohydrates, because what these foods do is they help produce serotonin, and they help shunt serotonin in the brain. So actually, if you get a real craving for any sort of carbohydrate, any sugar just before your period, the body is actually trying to produce more serotonin to help balance out your mood. So there are many ways to balance progesterone and estrogen, but actually what I suggest is getting your hormone levels tested via the Dutch test. And the reason for that is, rather than just guessing based on your symptoms, you can see exactly what is going on with your hormones. If that isn't an option for you, then seed cycling can be a really nice place to start, which is where we consume seeds that encourage the right production of the hormone at the right time. So flax seeds and pumpkin seeds in the first half, and sunflower seeds and sesame seeds in the second half. Also making sure we include lots of lovely starchy fibrous carbohydrates, so think vegetables, root vegetables, whole grains in the luteal phase, which helps to encourage serotonin production and can help to keep your mood balanced. If you resonate with headaches, anxiety, brain fog, period pain, then histamine may be a factor in your PMS. Histamine is a natural part of the immune system which helps to defend against anything that the body flags as an allergen. Histamine itself isn't the problem, but actually if we have too much or an inability to clear it out, that is when symptoms can arise. So histamine levels increase as estrogen levels increase because they both stimulate the production of each other. Progesterone, always being the yin to estrogen's yang, helps to decrease histamine, which can help to alleviate histamine-driven PMS symptoms. So to help with high histamine levels or histamine intolerance, we want to make sure that we produce enough progesterone, and ovulation is key to produce sufficient progesterone. So either getting your levels tested, tracking whether you ovulate, or including seed cycling can be a nice place to start to make sure you produce enough progesterone. You can also look to decrease foods which either contain or stimulate histamine production, so things like alcohol, especially red wine, dairy and fermented foods. Vitamin B6 is also really important for the production of DAO, the DAO enzyme, which helps to break down histamine. So including foods like walnuts, avocados, bananas, chickpeas, spinach, eggs, beans and potatoes, all rich in vitamin B6, can really help to alleviate some histamine symptoms. Moving on, inflammation is the third factor that can occur with PMS. So inflammation puts a stop to how hormones communicate with each other, and as each hormone cues off from each other, it can create hormonal havoc. So inflammation blunts the production of progesterone as well as blocking the receptors, so effectively you need more progesterone to get the calming effects. It desensitizes the GABA receptor, and if you remember, GABA is the calming hormone, and desensitizing the GABA receptor would also decrease the effectiveness of progesterone. It also disrupts how estrogen is eliminated from the body and hypersensitizes the receptors to estrogen. So in summary, inflammation really creates the perfect storm for PMS. So reducing inflammation is a big topic. It depends what is causing inflammation in the body, but foods is a really nice place to start because it's something that goes in the body every single day. So reducing inflammatory foods, so things like sugar, processed foods, processed fats, and alcohol is a really great, good place to start. Ensuring getting adequate sleep, which helps the body repair itself overnight, reducing inflammation levels. And actually the best way to quash inflammation levels, is to address your root cause. So actually, is that in gut imbalance? Is that sluggish liver? Are that high stress levels? Are they nutrient deficiencies? If you aren't sure what's causing your inflammation, then please reach out and we can discuss actually what is going to be the right progress for you to identify what your inflammatory source is. The fourth thing that can cause PMS, and one of the most simplest things but hardest things to get right, is blood sugar. So when we consume any sugar or carbohydrate, it doesn't really matter what it is. The body releases the hormone insulin in response to that, which then helps to package up the glucose or the sugar so it can be used for energy straight away or stored for later use. So quick releasing sugar and carbohydrates, so think beige foods, cause a sharp increase in glucose levels, which is followed by a lot of insulin being produced, which follows by low blood sugar. So although all carbohydrates, whether that be a Mars bar, whether that be broccoli, whether that be a piece of bread, all stimulate the production of insulin, actually the amount of insulin that is released varies. So actually the really sugary and refined carbohydrates, so again think beige foods, cause a big spike in glucose, big spike in insulin, and then we get the drop in blood sugar. The body and the brain require a constant, moderate supply of glucose to function optimally. So a drop in blood glucose can really exaggerate things like low mood, anxiety, and sugar cravings. Sugar can also impair how the body detoxifies and uses estrogen, causing high estrogen levels, which, as above, is associated with irritability, headaches, breast pain, and fluid retention. So balancing our blood sugar levels, as I say, it's one of the most simple things, but the hardest things to get right. Good places to start is to make sure that we can consume good quality protein, healthy fats, and fibrous carbohydrates. We want to try and avoid sugary and refined carbohydrates generally, but especially close to your period to reduce PMS symptoms. Fifth cause of PMS can be high stress levels. So triggering the stress response can cause low blood sugar levels, which is one way it can contribute to PMS, as we went through earlier. However, also, adrenaline, which is produced in the stress response, can prevent the body from being able to use progesterone efficiently, causing an imbalance between this and estrogen. Dialing down the stress can be easier said than done, I know that, but actually it's really important to make it a non-negotiable part of your daily routine to contribute to your overall health and contribute to happy hormones, really. So much like how we brush our teeth every morning and evening, hopefully, just make it part of your routine. So even 10 minutes a day of being more mindful, walking, deep breathing, stretching, can all really, really make a difference. Exercise is a great way to de-stress, and it also has the increased benefits of releasing endorphins, which can help to improve mood and also feelings of calm. So if you do notice that your mood really goes haywire, or you feel quite down or irritable the week before your period, if you can get some exercise in, even gentle exercise, you can get the benefits of more endorphins. So actually it can help to boost your mood and reduce things like anxiety. So definitely make sure it's something you enjoy and you feel capable of doing, and make sure it's probably a lower intensity and lower impact. The sixth contributing factor to PMS is your liver health. So did you know that every single hormone is detoxified by the liver before being eliminated by the gut? So if your liver is sluggish or backed up, then it won't be able to detoxify your hormones efficiently. So what happens is, when this occurs, when the liver isn't working as it should, is estrogen can sit around, and then it can get reabsorbed, which adds to your overall estrogen bucket, and then it can throw out the estrogen-progesterone ratio. So the liver is just one of the detoxifying organs, the skin being another. So if you suffer with hormonal acne, then make sure you give your liver some love, because actually if that isn't functioning as it should, often the toxins can come out in our skin, which is where acne can occur. The liver will always prioritise detoxing things like chemicals, medications and environmental toxins over hormones, because actually simply they are more toxic. They can do more harm to the body, so they need to be dealt with more quickly. So if you think about them like speedy boarders nipping in ahead when you're in a queue boarding a flight. So a happy liver is really essential for a happy you and no PMS symptoms. So focus on reducing your environmental toxin exposure, so actually your hormones can be those speedy boarders and get in the queue. So thinking about our cleaning products, our beauty products, organic food, water and air quality are really important. Then also including lots of liver-loving foods. So cruciferous vegetables are great. So cabbage, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, broccoli sprouts, rocket and kale are all powerhouses for supporting the liver. The seventh factor kind of ties in nicely with the liver that can contribute to PMS is gut health. So once the liver has detoxified all our toxins or hormones, it is then dumped into the gut for elimination. So the gut is the direct route out the body for all your toxins and hormones that have been dealt with. And just as above, if your gut is sluggish or you have an imbalance in bacteria, then actually that estrogen can be reabsorbed, contributing to your estrogen load and contributing to the imbalance between progesterone and estrogen. So how you support the gut really depends on what needs supporting. So actually if you have a sluggish gut, so maybe you suffer with constipation, or you have a faster moving gut, so suffer with diarrhea, or you have an imbalance in bacteria, you have low stomach acid, the list really does go on. So actually identifying for you where you need support, and whether that is done by symptoms, whether it's done by testing, can all be, both can be really great ways of identifying that. But for anyone, chewing is always the best place to start. So if you think about the digestive system, much like dominoes, so each one has to fall for the next domino, if you like, to fall down. So if we start in our brains, in our head, in our mouths, actually that is the best way to help with digestion. So if you aren't chewing, and I would say that most people aren't chewing enough, then just actually think about how much you're chewing, because ideally we should be chewing our food, so if you spat it back out, you couldn't really recognise what is there. So think about actually how much you're chewing. It sounds simple, but trust me, it is really effective. And the last and final thing that can contribute to PMS are nutritional deficiencies. And there are many different nutrients that are involved in a healthy menstrual cycle. And I can't cover them all, but I will cover the top 3 that can impact PMS. So vitamin B6 is required both by the body to make serotonin and dopamine, which is associated with pleasure. Serotonin is a happy hormone. Dopamine is associated with pleasure. Both help to reduce prolactin and aldosterone levels, which are associated with breast pain and water retention. So serotonin and dopamine levels can also affect mood. So low levels are associated with anxiety, irritability, and low mood. So if any of those symptoms resonate, check your B6. Omega-3 is another one. It's a great all-round anti-inflammatory superstar. So not only can it contribute to a reduction in inflammation generally, but it's also a precursor to something called prostaglandins, but the anti-inflammatory kind. So high inflammatory prostaglandins can contribute to things like increased cramping and diarrhea on the first day of your period, but anti-inflammatory prostaglandins, which are formed from omega-3, can really help to combat these symptoms. And the last one is magnesium. I couldn't possibly talk about hormones and PMS without talking about magnesium, because magnesium is your hormone golden girl. Magnesium is a nerve and muscle relaxant which can really help to alleviate muscle cramps as well as migraine, and it really has a calming effect which can help to alleviate anxiety. It is hugely involved in our hormone production. So actually, if you do notice you have more anxiety, more migraines, more cramping, get some magnesium in.